Good morning, good morning. All right. Okay. Good morning, good morning, good morning, and welcome to Daring Dialogues. I am your host, Shantae Charles. Good morning, Pastor Ben. Good morning, Lady Latoya. And good morning to those of you who are watching outside of the app. You know, I am getting lots of people who are watching outside the app, and I would really like to say good morning and happy Friday to you as well. And I also want to say good morning and happy Friday to those of you who are watching by our YouTube live stream. If you check out my bio, you will see that we have added a new way that you can give and donate through the Cash App. And that information is located in my bio. So for those of you who are givers, we do have another way that you can give through the Cash App. As we recap from the week, I did want to go ahead and give the answers to the trivia questions that we went over on Tuesday, I believe it was. And then we're going to jump right into our readings from today. We have 3 books we're reading from. We're reading from The Power of Small. We're reading from The Little Book of Business Wisdom, which I think you guys are going to enjoy today's readings. And then we're going to follow it up with Leadership Secrets from the Bible. And then that will be our readings for today. Next Friday, we're going to come back and we're going to focus on health on next Friday. So if you want some information on health, and we're going to talk about plant-based food and plant-based diets and plant-based eating. I know a lot of us are still eat some level of meat. I know I have tried to limit my eating of meat products. And so we're just going to talk a little bit about what that looks like. How does that affect your body? And who most really benefits from moving to a plant-based diet. All right, so that's what we're going to talk about next Friday. My shirt today says run, rest, and repeat. Because after we get done doing all of our running, as us people like to do, us motivated people, we do need to take some time to rest and refuel so that we can repeat and keep going and do what we need to do. So for our questions that we had this week, we talked about September 15, 1963, white American terrorists planted a bomb inside of a church, and we're asking what location was it? It was the 16th Street Baptist Church bombing. And there's actually a really awesome movie centered around this story, and the movie is called When the Watsons Go to Birmingham. It was a PBS movie. I actually picked it up from my local library and watched it, and it was actually really, really good. So it's probably at your local library. Just look up When the Watsons Go to Birmingham, or it's probably on Netflix by now, or you can view it through YouTube Red, one of those resources. All right. And it's actually a fictional story, but it's set around the topic of the 16th Street Baptist Church bombing. Somebody put it's on Netflix. Awesome. So yes, I would recommend watching that if you want to just get a historical context for what was going on. Very good movie. The second question was about who was founded in Oakland, California in 1966 that took action in defense of African American communities against police brutality and racist policies. These people developed innovative community survival service programs to protect and strengthen neighborhoods, specifically black neighborhoods. They supported health clinics, liberation schools, free breakfast programs, clothing distribution centers, as well as confronting injustice within the legal system, and that was the Black Panthers. All right? The Black Panthers. This one was, for some reason, very hard for people to get. I mean, I got a lot of answers surrounding it, but the specific answer for this, I'll give in just a second. I said these things are defined as the basic, inalienable human things every person should have as defined by the U.S. Constitution, regardless of race, sex, or religion. Throughout American history, African Americans have struggled to attain these to which everyone is due. And the answer was civil rights. Okay. And then the last one was located in Harlem at the 142nd Street and Lenox Avenue. This place was the most famous night spot in New York for nearly 2 decades and attracted members of high society. It provided a platform for prominent African American musicians, singers, and dancers. In 1927, Duke Ellington's orchestra was the house band, followed in 1931 by Cab Calloway and his Missourians. The club relocated, well, the place at the time when I read it, relocated to Midtown Manhattan until it closed in 1940, and the answer was the Cotton Club. All right. So the next time we do a giveaway, our next quarterly giveaways will be at episode 75. So just remember, we're going in quarters. We did one at 25, we did one at 50, and so our next one will be at 75. All right. So let's get into our readings for today on the power of small. And this one is called The Power of Making Small Talk. And this is just a little bit of inspiration for you today as you go about your day and as you are operating in business and commerce, especially this weekend. I want you to take a moment to think about some of the things we're sharing in this book and try to put them in practice. The ultimate coffee break. Anna Marie Asnes was the kind of person who loved to learn about and remember little details of everyone's life. One of her favorite haunts was the Starbucks at the corner of North Proctor and 26th Street in Tacoma, Washington. The 55-year-old administrative assistant, good morning, would stop by each morning on her way to work at a nearby university. Sandy Anderson, the 51-year-old barista who usually served her, didn't know her name but always had her short drip double-cupped coffee waiting. Anna Marie usually bought her jolt of Java with spare change she had accumulated, and in a few moments it usually took her to fish out her quarters, dimes, and nickels. She and Sandy would enjoy a quick, friendly exchange. Through those brief daily conversations, they came to know about grandkids, birthdays, favorite vacation spots, and holiday visits from far-flung relatives. One morning, however, Sandy could tell that Anna Marie wasn't herself. She seemed glum. "What's wrong?" she asked. "Are you feeling okay?" At first, Anna Marie was reluctant to tell her, but Sandy gently continued to prod. Anna Marie finally confided, "I was just placed on the National Kidney Transplant list, and I'm getting ready to go on dialysis." The polycystic kidney disease she had been suffering from for 17 years had now become life-threatening, and no donor was available. No one in Anna Marie's family was a match, and it would likely be years before she might get a kidney from the organ bank. Right away, my first thought was about her new granddaughter, Ava. Excuse me. Sandy remembers. Sandy had 3 beloved grandchildren of her own. Looking across the counter at Anna Marie, she didn't hesitate. "I can go get tested for you," she announced. Anna Marie was stunned at the barista's generosity, but tried not to get her hopes up. After all, the odds of Sandy being a match were small. And the 2 women barely knew each other. Even if Sandy were a match, Anna Marie wouldn't blame her if she backed out. But each day, Sandy assured Anna Marie that she was pursuing her offer. One morning, as Anna Marie walked into the store, Sandy couldn't contain her excitement. She reached across the counter and grabbed Anna Marie's hand. "I'm a match," she cried. The 2 women hugged and began weeping, oblivious to the growing line of bewildered customers. "We stood there and just cried," Anna Marie remembered later. The line was stretching practically out the door by then, but it was surreal. It was like just the 2 of us in the whole world. Why would a virtual stranger offer to make such a sacrifice for her? Anna Marie comes back to the short conversations they shared every morning. When you look into someone's eyes, you see a person and you can connect with their warmth. Just the few minutes it took each morning to carefully count out her change had planted the seeds of a deeper friendship. I never thought a $1.52 cup of coffee could literally save my life. Sandy kept her word. The surgery took place on March 11, 2008, and was a success for both recipient and donor. When they woke up, the women couldn't wait to see each other. As Sandy later admitted with a smile, Anne-Marie has come to treasure. We just wanted to talk and talk and talk and talk. We have become so insular as a society that we think there's no need for small talk. We're busy and focused on getting from one place to another and on achieving results. We forget how important it is to let our armor down and let people see another side of us. Anne-Marie might have held fast to her initial impulse and kept her problem to herself. What if Sandy hadn't gently persisted? A life literally hung in the balance. The outcome changed because each woman took a small step outside the boundaries of what was expected. Anne-Marie let herself be vulnerable. What we love about their story is how vividly it reminds us to see each other in ways that go beyond the familiar roles we play. We're in such a rush to get things done that we tend to see the people who make cameo appearances in our lives every day solely through the roles they play. They're just the guy who sells us a newspaper every morning or the one who takes our dry cleaning. We often don't look beyond the uniform they wear or only a few moments, a few words, and a life can sometimes rest in the balance. And thank you, YouTube audience, for okay. Let's see if we can get this to close. Apparently my Periscope is doing something weird. Now I can't get it to close. Doop-dee-doo. Doo-dee-doo-doo-doo. I'm still stuck up there. All right, let's see if it will shift. All right, we are back on. Sorry about that delay. Let's see if we can get people to come back in. Just waiting. Thank you for coming back in, Ben. Sorry about that. Not sure why my screen froze. Let's see if we can get people back in. Put some hearts on the screen if you can see and hear me. Put some hearts on the screen if you can see and hear me. All right. Got a few. Sorry about that. Hearts on the screen if you can see and hear me. If you're in the chat room. Just giving it a moment. Thank you, Ben. All right. Only person I can see in my chat box is you, Ben, so I'm not sure who else is on. I hope they're not still stuck. All right. Well, I'm going to keep going. Hopefully, hopefully the screen will not freeze and people will be able to come in. There you go. Good morning again. This is take 2. I'm not having these problems over here on YouTube, by the way. My YouTube live stream is still going. So I'm not sure how much you all heard of the end of that particular story, but the gist of that story was the fact that as a society, we tend to think that there's no need for small talk. Okay? As a society, we tend to think that there's no need to get to know the people who are around us. Sometimes we're so busy with our day or our activities that we're not really stopping to pay attention to the people that are around us. All right? She said, we're in such a rush to get things done that we tend to see the people who make cameo appearances in our lives every day only through the roles that they play. Good morning. All right. Sometimes we say it's just the person who serves my coffee or just the person who takes my dry cleaning. We often don't look beyond the uniform that they wear or the service that they offer. Making a human connection takes only a few moments and a few words. A life can sometimes rest in the balance. So it was her barista that actually wound up being a match for her kidney that she needed to live. All right. Here's another one here. Schmooze or lose. Schmooze or lose. Research suggests that it only takes us about 7 seconds to decide how we feel about another person in business or professional situations. Those first few seconds are crucial. All right. Somebody put up 7 seconds. It only takes us about 7 seconds to decide how we feel about another person. And those first few seconds are crucial. Once someone mentally labels you as likable or unlikable, thank you, Pastor Ben, thank you, Lady Apostle, everything else you do will be viewed through that filter. Listen, we know this to be true. Even though research suggests it, we know this to be true. If they don't like you within 7 seconds, they will suspect devious motives in all your actions. If they do like you, they will look for the best in all of your actions. Isn't that crazy? The ability to excel at small talk can make an enormous difference in how others feel about you. And that can have repercussions down the line, both in your career and in your professional life. Dr. Thomas Harrell, a professor at Stanford University, spent much of his career tracking a group of MBAs after graduation. He discovered that their grade point averages had little effect on their ultimate success in the business world. What really mattered were their conversation skills. And this is something that people are not teaching. They're not. Are you a good conversator? Do you have more than one subject matter that you can converse with somebody around? Conversation skills matter. I know some people take actual courses like speech and debate, right? But speech and debate is not offered to everyone. You have to actually elect that in school, unless you get to the collegiate level, all right? And you want to take that. Public speaking, there are organizations that are out there like Toastmasters that help with you developing your public speaking skills. Some communities offer what they call a leadership program, and they will select certain people out of the community that they feel have a potential to be leaders inside the community. For example, Leadership Tallahassee. These are programs that select a certain amount of people to go through a process to develop their leadership skills. But overall, okay, this is not something that everybody is doing. So you have to take the initiative, right, to improve your conversation skills. I know for myself, I am a better communicator in writing than I am verbally. That's what I feel. Okay. So part of Daring Dialogues for me is to help me become a better verbal communicator, which means I have to get up and I have to talk and I have to speak. Ministering the gospel is one thing. Conversating with people on a variety of subject matter is a whole other skill. Don't be deceived. All right. You may be a great preacher, but you still may need some help in communicating. Okay. Raise your hand if you've ever heard a sermon that after the sermon was done, you had no clue what that person was talking about. I'll be the first one to raise my hand. I will. I mean, they were going at it. They had the theatrics and, you know, and they were doing karate chops and they were hopping up and down. But you couldn't understand half of what they were saying or even the point they were trying to make. All right. They went from Genesis to Revelation and had no central thought. So just because somebody has charisma, that doesn't necessarily mean they have great communicating skills. Let me say that again. Just because someone has charisma and people are drawn to their charisma does not mean that they have great communicating skills. So it's always a good practice to improve your conversation and your communication skills. The graduates who ended up with the most prestigious jobs and the highest salaries were the ones who were most adept socially. Our ability to master the art of small talk can be a huge boost to our professional and personal lives, but only if we know how to take advantage of it. So here are a few tips to taking advantage of small talk. The first tip is lighten up. Lighten up. It turns out that kidding around at the beginning of a meeting is the most productive thing you can do. Seriously. Chris Robert, a psychologist at the University of Missouri, found that humor in the workplace enhances creativity and job performance. We have noticed this at our agency as well. We begin every brainstorming session for a new ad campaign with light banter or a joke or two. It helps relax the team and brings the stress level in the room down to a notch. Now, let's put a caveat there because you have to be careful in the society in which we live, right? That you are joking in a way that is not offensive to other people, right? Because what may seem funny to one particular group may not be funny to another group. So I would say use humor with caution, understand your audience, and stay away from things that can seem offensive, such as racially tinged jokes, jokes that deal with potty humor, jokes that deal with sexual innuendo. All right. So he says, in fact, as we have recounted many times, goofing around is exactly what made Aflac a household word. We had been working on a campaign idea for Aflac for weeks. It wasn't easy. The name of the company was difficult to remember. And how interesting could we make insurance? Many of the people working with us on the account were constantly forgetting the name of the company we were pitching. Aflac actually stands for American Family Life Assurance Company. Even as we got down to the wire before our presentation to the CEO, we were trying to settle a breakthrough approach, and nothing was gelling. To blow off steam, Eric David, one of our creative directors, decided to take a break and grab lunch at a corner deli. On the walk there, he kept repeating the name, Aflac, 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 over and over to himself. He arrived back at our offices with a cornered beef on rye, with a sandwich of beef on rye and a smile on his face. Then he proceeded to pinch his nose as he quacked out Aflac at his partner Tom and waddled around like a duck. This might seem like unacceptable behavior at a company not accustomed to antics of advertising or comedy writing, but we knew we had just seen a brilliant idea hatched before our eyes, making a duck the star of the campaign. We won the account, and the Aflac duck has become one of the most famous icons in American advertising, and he is right. All right. So he used humor, right, to solve a business problem that has now become, as he said, a very famous icon. Most people who see that duck know that it has to do with Aflac insurance. All right. Here's another tip. Just say please. An essential ingredient in making small talk is finding a way to make the other person feel special and appreciated. Yet, in too many companies, such positive affirmations are ignored altogether. Sullivan and Cromwell, a white shoe law firm, had an attrition problem, over 30% of turnover for 2 years running. Compensation was not the issue. The lawyers that worked there were extremely well paid, nor were promotions or health benefits at fault. Simply put, the young attorneys did not feel appreciated. When the journal American Lawyer published its annual review of mid-level associates, Sullivan and Cromwell ranked near the very bottom of the firms surveyed. So in August 2006, the partners decided to introduce two phrases throughout the company that had been missing from the firm's lexicon: please and thank you. Senior partners began making small talk with junior associates over lunch and in the elevators. They began praising them for jobs well done, or politely asking rather than demanding if they would be able to stay late for an urgent meeting. It did not cost them one dime, business people, but the effort to be gracious, respectful, and polite to everyone in the firm, regardless of their position in the hierarchy, had a powerful effect. When the next American Lawyer review rolled around, Sullivan and Cromwell was rated the top employer among New York firms, and all it had to do with was the power of small talk. That fact is, the words we use to express ourselves, as well as those we don't use, make a big difference on how others perceive us and feel about us. Please and thank you. I grew up in the era where your parents insisted that you learn those two words. Please and thank you. They insisted that you didn't demand things from people. You said, please, can I please have X, Y, and Z? And when the request was made, or maybe you didn't get your way, but guess what? You still ended with, thank you. Good morning, darling. Yes, ma'am, and yes, sir. That's another one. Thank you. I know the further you get north, if you say yes, ma'am, people tend to think, oh, you're from the South, and you don't have to say ma'am or you don't have to say sir because it makes them feel old. I've heard that several times. But I still do it because I tell people, for me, it is a sign of respect. Unless you just insist on me calling you by your first name, then I will do that. But I tend to greet people with a yes ma'am or a yes sir, because that is a part of my upbringing. And I think that they made a very important point here. It did not cost a dime for this company to add please and thank you to their vocabulary to their employees. And they shot up to the #1 spot in terms of being a good employer. And it was based around how they treated the people working under them. Last one, curiosity kills the competition. Curiosity kills the competition. There is nothing more seductive than being around someone who finds you fascinating. It is the secret behind successful talk shows like Jay Leno's, who work hard to always make his guests seem brilliant and funny. And that's the reason he gets these people back time after time. Yet when we make small talk, too many of us tend to turn the subject of the conversation back on ourselves, a subject infinitely less interesting to the other person unless you happen to be Johnny Depp or Angelina Jolie. Leno realizes that asking questions of his guests and making them the center of attention makes them comfortable and more likely to do an effective job entertaining his audience. As he told us, the trick is to make the guests look good at the expense of the host. The shows that tend to fail are the ones where the host looks good at the expense of the guest. Eventually, the host realizes, hey, how come I'm not getting these guests anymore? How come these people don't want to come on my show? Well, guess what? Nobody really wants to come on someone's show, or nobody really wants to come to someone's ministry, or nobody really wants to come to someone's business to be humiliated, right? Put some hearts on the screen. Put some hearts on the screen if when you arrive somewhere, you don't expect to be humiliated. Okay. I don't know about you, but I've had some experiences where I've gone places and I was not treated well. And I said to myself, I will not be coming back. No hard feelings or anything like that, but just once. It just takes one time. So you don't want to be the person who returns somewhere to a place that's not hospitable or to a place that does not treat you well, right? So the results of a recent study conducted by clinical psychology doctoral students Todd Kashdan and Paul Rose revealed that being nosy is a turn on. The more curious people are during a conversation, the more positive the outcome, whether it is a casual encounter or one where a deeper connection is sought. Either way, the other person feels important and valued, which then has a boomerang effect on the person asking the questions. Who doesn't like being around someone who seems infinitely more interested in our lives than in their own? We have often been in competition with another top agency for a new account or a piece of business, only to end up winning that account because the client felt we were more curious about their company and what makes it tick. Our interest is genuine. We really do want to know and understand the people that we're working with and the intricacies of their business. The curious thing is that these interactions don't happen in board meetings. They happen during the casual social conversation that precedes a formal presentation. Our point? Small talk is anything but idle chatter. In fact, it's the glue that cements so many relationships. So, what are they saying? First of all, add polite conversation and add polite language when you're talking to other people. The other thing they talked about here was being willing to talk to other people, being willing to ask other people about their lives, right? And not focus so much on your own, and the ability of humor to help you lighten things up and get the ball rolling with small talk. All right. The Little Book of Business Wisdom. Today we're looking at two individuals in here. First person we're going to look at is Warren E. Buffett. They call him the Oracle of Omaha, I believe. Everyone knows Warren Buffett, right? The billionaire investor was said to have discovered money like Mozart discovered music. Imagine $10,000 invested with Warren Buffett in 1956 was worth $80 million in 1994. He has always worked hard. As a kid, he had 2 paper routes, retrieved golf balls for resale, and managed pinball machines. After attending the University of Nebraska, he studied at Columbia University, where he met his mentor, Benjamin Graham, the undisputed father of modern securities analysis. In 1956, Buffett started his own investing firm and then bought Berkshire Hathaway, turning it into a holding company for his investments. He made a killing by investing in companies with virtual monopolies in their industries, such as Coca-Cola, Disney, and Gillette. So here are some investment principles from Warren Buffett. This is for people who want to get into investing. These are some investment principles that he uses, okay? Rule number 1, never lose money. Rule number 2, never forget rule number 1. Then he says, I never attempt to make money on the stock market. I buy on the assumption that these companies could close the market the next day and not reopen it for 5 years. So he is thinking in the long term. The market is there only as a reference point to see if anybody is offering anything foolish. When we invest in stocks, we invest in businesses. All right? So, and I actually believe that. I believe that if you're going to invest in stock, invest in companies that you are already using, invest in companies that you know the product, you know whether or not you like the product. Okay? He said, the dumbest reason to buy a stock is because it's going up. Great investment opportunities come around when excellent companies are surrounded by unusual circumstances that cause the stock to be misappraised. We don't make judgments based on ratings. If we wanted Moody's and Standards & Poor's to run our money, we would give our money to them. Draw a circle around the businesses you understand and then eliminate those that fail to qualify on the basis of value, good management, and limited exposure to hard times. I can't be involved in 50 or 75 things. That's a Noah's Ark way of investing. You end up in a zoo that way. I like to put meaningful amounts of money in a few things. I read annual reports of the company I'm looking at, and I read the annual reports of the competitors. That is the main source of material for deciding whether or not I will invest in a company. We love the kinds of companies that can do well in international markets, obviously, particularly where they're largely untapped. You should invest in a business that even a fool can run, because someday a fool will run it. Ladies and gentlemen, Warren Buffett. All right, our next person, I thought this gentleman was very interesting. He lived from 1834 to 1923. His name was Henry Clews, C-L-E-W-S. Henry Clews was once a powerful figure on the street and wrote several insightful books on the subject, often quoted by historians. While growing up in England, his parents expected him to join the family business of manufacturing china. However, when he accompanied his father to New York City in 1850, Clews became enthralled with the American lifestyle and never returned. He found a clerk position with a large importer and then moved into finance. Before long, he and some friends opened a private bank on Wall Street. Ever ambitious, Clews joined the New York Stock Exchange and survived battles with such notorious characters as Daniel Drew and Jay Gould, who ultimately taught him what kind of person to avoid on Wall Street. The study of the stock market. Next to the unwisdom of selecting and following bad or incompetent advisors in matters of speculation and investment, there are also certain persons whom, if you wish to do well and make a fortune honestly, you should be careful to avoid these people, Henry says. You will not always know them by their appearance. In fact, that is often the worst rule to go by, for they are generally well disguised. It is in their walk, talk, and conversation that you will find them out. And that this be the easier, I have made a collection of their characteristics as follows. Now, you have got to hear this list, okay? He's talking about if you want to make an honest living in trading, in stocks, and investing, avoid these people. And he's got a good list, okay? He says, avoid a man who vilifies his benefactor, the person that has been helping him out. Avoid a man who vilifies his benefactor, who unjustly accuses others of bad deeds, who never has a good word for anybody, who is always prating about their own virtues, who, when he drinks, habitually drinks alone, who boasts of the superiority of his family, who talks religion downtown in connection with his daily business affairs, who talks recklessly against the virtue of respectable women, who runs in debt with no apparent intention of paying people back, who borrows small sums on his note or check dated ahead, who won't work for an honest living, who looks down upon those who do work for an honest living, who imputes bad motives to those trying to do good, who betrays confidence, who lies, who is honest only for the policy's sake, who deceives his wife and boasts about it to other people, who chews tobacco in public, who gets intoxicated in public places, who partakes of hospitality and talks behind his entertainer's back, who borrows money from a friend and then blackguards the lender. In other words, blacklists or refuses to pay that person back. With a population of 80 million people, which this country had at the time, it is easy to find associates in life without selecting men possessed of any of these characteristics, and life is the better worth living without them. You will both save and make money by strict observance of this short catalog of people to avoid. You are not called upon to do anything or to risk any money in the exercise of this discretion. It simply consists in letting such people alone. And if you have been in the habit of being imposed upon by such characters, you will find your happiness as well as your treasury greatly increased by prudently avoiding them. When it comes to deciding whether you should handle your own investments or seek professional guidance, Clues offered this advice. If you need legal help, you see a lawyer. And if you're sick, you see a doctor. Case closed. All right. So that is Mr. Clues. Our last book for today is Leadership Secrets from the Bible. And the section that we're looking at today is Acting with Integrity. Acting with integrity. Words are not exactly cheap, but actions are dearer. Matthew emphasized that long speeches and oaths were not necessary to impress people with one's integrity. Matthew 5, verse 33 through 37 says this, "Do not swear at all, either by heaven, for it is God's throne, or by the earth, for it is his footstool, or by Jerusalem, for it is the city of the great king. And do not swear by your head, for you cannot make even one hair white or black. Simply let your yes be yes and your no be no." In recent years, we have been treated to leaders like Bill Clinton asking interrogators to clarify the meaning of the word is, and Bill Gates questioning the meaning of the word concerned. In the face of obfuscations like these, it is sometimes difficult to believe that these men's yeses are yes and nos are no. But let's go back a few thousand years to Nehemiah, whose integrity, good morning to beloved, whose integrity inspired the people of Judah to rebuild the temple in less than 2 months. Appointed governor by King Artaxerxes, Nehemiah could have enriched himself and used any means at his disposal to complete the temple. But this is what he said: "Neither I nor my brothers ate the food allotted to the governor, but the earlier governors placed a heavy burden on the people and took 40 shekels of silver from them in addition to food and wine. But I did not act like the former governors. Instead, I devoted myself to the work on this wall. We did not acquire any land. Furthermore, 150 Jews and officials ate at my table. Each day, 1 ox, 6 choice sheep, and some poultry were prepared for me. In spite of all of this, I never demanded the food allotted to the governor because the demands were heavy on the people." Now that's just a whole sermon all by itself. Nehemiah is saying, because this is the governor's portion, and he was made the governor at the time to help rebuild Jerusalem, he said, because this is the governor's portion, I could have taken it without a problem. But I chose not to take it, understanding it would have put a heavy burden on the people to provide this level of food and produce simply for one person as the governor. Matter of fact, he said, I let 150 Jews eat at my table. In other words, there was enough supply just for the governor to feed 150 other people. Think about that. So he didn't waste the resources. He actually shared them. Note that Nehemiah refused to appropriate more than he was entitled to. He didn't ask for the full amount of what he was entitled to, but shared what he had with his followers. This was for the sake of the morale of the people and for rapid completion of the task. Compare his philosophy to that of Russ Baumgartner, president of Apogee Enterprises, a glass manufacturer cited as one of the 100 best companies to work for in America. He said, "We pay the taxes that are due. We don't pay more than we owe, but we never cheat the government. And as long as we're on the subject, we never cheat our suppliers or our employees or our customers. The prophets were the people who kept the nation of Israel honest. Now let's just say la on that. The prophets were the people who kept the nation of Israel honest. So if your nation is lacking honesty and integrity, then you have to go back and look at what are the prophets doing. Again and again, the people lost sight of the commandments dealing with honesty and integrity. Again and again, prophets arose to remind them where true north lay on the compass when the whole nation was taking a moral turn south. So when your nation takes a downturn in morality, the prophets should not be joining them in the downturn. The prophets should actually be directing them back to the plumb line. So if you don't see the prophets doing that, if you see the prophets joining in immorality, then we're in trouble. Ezekiel prophesied against false prophets, those with false words, lying visions, and utter lying divinations. Today, we speak of those who varnish or whitewash the truth by putting a pleasing surface on top of a weak or faulty structure. Several thousand years ago, Ezekiel addressed this universal problem using a very similar analogy. He said in Ezekiel 13, verses 10 through 16, "When a flimsy wall is built, they cover it with whitewash. Therefore, tell those who cover it with whitewash that it is going to fall. When it falls, you will be destroyed by it. So I will spend my wrath against the wall and against those who covered it with whitewash. I will say to you, the wall is gone, and so are those who whitewashed it." Ezekiel 13, verse 10 through 16 in summary. Ezekiel proclaims there can be no true peace and harmony either in business or politics without true honesty and integrity. Whitewashes may seem to work in the short run, but they rarely do in the long. In 1985, federal prosecutors charged GE's reentry systems with a mammoth whitewashing job, claiming that they had committed $800,000 in fraud by altering their own workers' time cards. At first, GE refused to admit guilt, but then the company employer, Jack Welch, said, "We got to the point where we concluded that someone did cheat. Until we got to that point, we were chasing ourselves around in a circle." He might have added that they were just adding coats of whitewash to a flawed structure. When Welch and GE finally saw that the problem was one of basic integrity, they admitted their transgressions and set up an ethics program to make sure that the problem was addressed. The times of Jeremiah the prophet were corrupt, perhaps even more corrupt than America in the late 20th century. He continuously spoke out about the lack of integrity that permeated the entire society, which did not, of course, make him a revered guest of honor at the king's court or banquets. But a leader who points out other leaders' lack of integrity is not necessarily going to be popular in any society or business. So if you're committed to integrity and you're committed to the work of honesty, just understand that those who don't want integrity or honesty are not going to be happy to see you coming. Okay? They're not. Jeremiah 5 verse 1 and 2 says, "Go up and down the streets of Jerusalem, look around and consider, and search through her squares. If you can find but one person who deals honestly and seeks the truth, I will forgive this city." This is what God said. Can you just find one honest person? "And I will forgive the city. Although they say, as surely as the Lord lives, they are swearing falsely." Like the Greek philosopher Diogenes, Jeremiah could not find one honest man in the entire city. But he reasoned that he had looked only among the rank and file, not the exalted and moral heads of the metropolis. But to a man, with one accord, they too had broken off the yoke and torn off the bonds. Therefore, a lion from the forest will attack them. A wolf from the desert will ravage them, for their rebellion is great and their backslidings many. Jeremiah 5, verses 5 through 6. Back then, the likelihood of an actual lion or ravaging wolf was more literal likelihood and a more compelling metaphor. Today, lack of honesty and integrity in our business and political leaders has fewer direct physical consequences. But just as an impact on the business and political climate in our country, the wolves and the lions that attack a leader or company include loss of purpose and discouragement from the janitor all the way to the boardroom, and ultimately a loss of trust from the consumer of the product or service. Compare the long-term effects of Johnson & Johnson's removing millions of dollars worth of Tylenol from the shelves when a tiny number of cyanide-contaminated containers were discovered, okay? Versus the Ford's begrudging acknowledgement after many articles, congressional hearings, and speeches that the location of the Mustang's gas tank had been responsible for many fiery deaths. Which company acted with more integrity, Johnson & Johnson or Ford? Which realized better short and long-term economic and public relations results? The prophet Isaiah lived in an era where honesty and integrity were not the foundations of the nation of Israel. He saw a vision of the Lord surrounded by angels, looked down at himself, and realized just how morally far he and his nation had sunk. Isaiah 6:5, he says, "Woe unto me! I am ruined. I am a man of unclean lips, and I live among a people of unclean lips." Isaiah was probably the cleanest lipped guy in town, but even he knew that he was lacking. In a corrupt organization, everyone gets corrupted. Once a company gets a reputation for dirty dealing, even the most honest of its employees get tarred with the same brush. Perhaps Isaiah had nowhere else to go, or perhaps he had a supreme dedication to his people, but he decided to stay and reform the country despite the fact that he was preaching his message as forcefully as he could while no one seemed to be listening or responding. Welcome to 2017. Every organization has at least one Isaiah, someone who reminds the organization of its original mission and principles each time it strays from those principles. The wise and courageous leader permits the existence of Isaiahs as a safety valve and a warning sign. The wisest leaders protect their Isaiahs from harm or even become Isaiahs themselves. Some organizations even have a position called corporate ombudsman, a person whose role it is to challenge the wisdom and integrity of the status quo, which is supported by those in power, but may not always be of long-term benefit to the organization. Over 90% of the Fortune 500 companies have a statement of ethics, but to many, these statements are simply writing on the wall. How many operationalize them like Northrop Grumman, who has an ethics department with a full-time staff that trains and counsels employees on the complex issues faced in the aerospace industry? Or consider a CEO who takes it upon himself to be his own Isaiah. Bill Hewlett of Hewlett-Packard once found the door to a supply room locked. He didn't like what that said about the honesty of the company's employees, so he snapped the lock open with a bolt cutter and left a note that said, "Don't ever lock this door again." That act probably communicated more about the company integrity than 100 speeches at corporate meetings. Sir Adrian Cadbury, CEO of a company whose name is associated with sweetness and not toughness, stands firm in his belief that actions, not words, are the key measures of integrity. The ethical standards of a company are judged by its actions, not by pious statements of intent put out in its name. This is probably a direct criticism of companies that hire outside consultants to design an ethics statement, which has little or nothing to do with how the business actually operates. A company's true ethics are reflected by where we stand as individual managers and how we behave when faced with decisions which require us to combine ethical and commercial judgments. What are our personal rules of conduct, and who else will be affected? How important is it for leaders to have actions congruent with their stated beliefs and good intentions? Don't just ask the head of a chocolate company. Put the question to James, one of the 12 disciples of Jesus. He says, anyone who listens to the word but does not do what it says is like a man who looks at his face in a mirror and after looking at himself goes away and immediately forgets what he looks like. James chapter 1, verse 22 through 24. Well, this has been another episode of Daring Dialogues. I hope that you got something out of today's reading. And as I was reading this, I couldn't help but think of who is going to be writing the book on NFL and their decisions that they're making right now, which literally have to do with their integrity and their honesty about what is actually going on in our country, in our nation. So their players are forcing them to deal in honesty and integrity. Their players are forcing them to either own up to what the protest is actually about or to keep deflecting and making it something else, which of course is causing people to question the integrity of the NFL as a whole, from its owners to the commissioner down to the players. Everybody's integrity in that organization right now is being put into question, whether they know it or not. Some people have already decided they will never, ever, ever watch another NFL game. They won't ever go to another physical game. They won't ever buy another ticket. They won't ever buy any other apparel. They won't subscribe to any sports channels. So it's affecting different areas of finance across the board because people are saying this is a lack of honesty about what is happening in our country. And now it's a lack of integrity because now you're trying to force people to do something based on a very, very deceptive interpretation of what is going on in our country. All right. The kneeling has never been about disrespecting the flag or the anthem. As a matter of fact, it's been said over and over and over again what the kneeling is about. And so the fact that people continue to ignore what the kneeling is about says something about their own level of honesty and integrity. Next week, we'll be talking about systems, safeguards, and standards, things that must happen and be put in place in a business. All right. So I want to thank you for your time and attention today. I hope that you have a great and wonderful Friday and weekend. I want to say thank you to those who were able to come back in. Sorry about our first run here on Periscope, but I'll leave that first one up because we did start there. All right. But again, remember, light is the most daring opposition to darkness. So please go out and be light today. Find somebody to make small talk with. Get to know somebody that you don't know right now. You might start a wonderful and great friendship. All right. So don't be afraid to engage in small talk this weekend. You all have a great and wonderful weekend. And I will be back ministering on Sunday at 2:30 p.m. and I will be broadcasting through our Periscope. All right. So thank you so much for your time and attention. Take care and God bless. And thank you all for those of you who are watching through our YouTube. Please make sure that you subscribe to the channel so that you can follow us for any other updates outside of our teaching. And check out the other playlists that we have here on our YouTube channel. We've got worship playlists. We've got music, my music release playlist as well. And so I hope that you take a look around the channel and check us out. Subscribe and share. Thank you so much and God bless.